Okay, so fun fact, I love thrifting. I love going into random thrift stores to see what I can find and figure out how to repurpose or make something new out of it. Even when I'm looking for something specific, I love thrifting online, whether it's Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, eBay, or whatever. Once I get an item, the first thing I do is clean it, no exceptions. If it's clothing, I wash it. If it's furniture, I bleach it down, scrubbing every single corner to get rid of germs or any insects that may be hiding in the crevices. But I don't stop there. I also make sure to spiritually cleanse every item as well, because you never know the energy of the household it came from, and I refuse to bring in that energy into mine. I don't care whether it was good or bad. So no matter how small or simple the item is, even if it's just a candle holder, it's getting a deep cleaning with the Lysol and a little bit of Florida water that you can get from BlaqueWitchYaya.com, and a good old-fashioned prayer. I know it's the witch in me that comes out to do this extra step, but stories like today prove why spiritually cleaning secondhand items is so important. So a little bit of sage and Florida water now can save you a lot of sleepless nights later. Hey y'all, I'm BlaqueWitchYaya. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. And we are in 2003, where there is a posting for a wine cabinet on eBay. The wooden box itself was cute and simple with engraved grapes on each door. Nothing too interesting unless that's exactly what you're looking for. But it was the description of this posting that caught everyone's attention. Instead of just sharing the measurements, the type of wood it's made of, or anything that you may just find in a regular description of a product, it told a story. Kevin Manis created this posting for his wine cabinet, and in the description he shared that he came across this box a couple of years ago in Portland, Oregon, and as the story continues, a reader and a potential buyer can pick up this is not just a beautiful story behind the wine cabinet. It's almost like a warning to not buy the wine cabinet, or take caution if you do buy it. So in September 2001, Kevin decided to go to an estate sale. I love estate sales, which wasn't new for him. He liked to shop around and collect antique items to sell at his furniture shop. While shopping around, Kevin learned that the items he was admiring belonged to a 103-year-old woman who was born in Poland and ended up in a Nazi concentration camp during the war. She managed to escape with a few other prisoners and was the only member of her immediate family to survive. She ended up in Spain and lived there until the end of the war. When coming to America, she brought 3 items with her, one being a small wine cabinet, which is one of the items that caught Kevin's eye, along with a few other goodies as well. While paying for his items, one of the granddaughters notices that he's buying one of the wine boxes, so she says, "Oh, I see you're getting a debit box." And Kevin looks at his items a little confused and asks, "What do you mean, the debit box?" "Well, the wine box. My grandmother, she kept it in her sewing room, far away from the grandchildren. She didn't want anyone touching it, or most importantly, she didn't want anyone opening it. She even asked to be buried with the box, but that went against the Orthodox Jewish burial." And Kevin asks, "Why did you just call it a debit box?" "Oh, I'm not sure. My grandmother called it that. She would warn us not to open it, like don't open a debit box because there was a dybbuk in it, but she never explained what exactly it was. So maybe you should do the same. I mean, we never opened it, so I just wanted to give you a heads up." And Kevin is like, "Well, it seems like it means a lot to you guys. I mean, she wanted to be buried with it, so I would hate to take it." And the granddaughter says, "No, it's okay. You brought it. It's yours." And he's like, "Listen, you can keep the money and the wine box. I would feel horrible taking it." And the granddaughter says, "No, you brought it. You made the deal. It's yours. We don't want it." So Kevin took his belongings and headed to his furniture shop. He kept replaying in his head, like, what does the granddaughter mean? Like, okay, you made the deal, we don't want it, as if they just did a grand exchange. But he placed the wine box in the basement of his furniture shop just so he could keep it to the side until he had time to make repairs on it. He went to run a few errands, and while he was out and about, his employee at his furniture shop called him yelling and screaming in the phone because she was scared because there was someone in the shop. She managed to lock the intruder exits, but she was still scared because someone was in the shop with her. So she's yelling in the phone like, "There's someone in the basement," and she's afraid that they're about to make their way up to her. So Kevin rushed back to his shop and began looking around to see who broke in and to see if he could catch the person. And there was only one way in and one way out of the basement, so he knew the person couldn't escape and had to be in there. So he went down to the basement, he looked around, and he didn't see anything but broken glass all over the floor. And then when he looked up, he seen that all the lights had burst. So he went back upstairs. to the main area of the furniture shop to let his employee know that the coast was clear. It was just glass bursting from the lights and we could figure out why later. But when he went up there to explain that to her, she was gone. And she never returned back to that furniture shop. She didn't want to explain what happened. Kevin kept calling her. That was her last day. So from there, Kevin thought it would be a great idea to gift his mother the wine box for her birthday. But first, he knew he would have to clean it up a bit, make a few changes, and just make it look brand new. And he worked at the furniture shop, so refurbishing items wasn't anything new to him. So one day, he decided to open up the wine box and give it a good cleaning. When he opened the wine box, he saw a variety of items that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be in a wine box. One being 2 pennies from the 1920s, 2 locks of hair, one a reddish blonde color and the other one black, 1 granite statue that had a Hebrew engraving on it, a dried rosebud, a wine cup, a black cast iron candlestick holder with tentacles at the base. And Kevin reached out to the family where he purchased the wine box, letting them know what he found to see that they want those items, and they're like, nope, it's yours, thank you, no thank you. So again, they didn't even want what was inside the wine box. I guess they were scared in the first place, like this man actually opened up the wine box after we told him not to. So Kevin continued to polish up the wine cabinet, and for his mother's birthday, which was on October 28th, but he presented her with the gift on October 31st, Halloween. So she stopped by the furniture shop before they headed to a celebratory lunch. She sat down. Kevin presented the wine box to her. She was so happy to have it, and while she was admiring the wine box, Kevin had to take a phone call in the back. So while he's on the phone, an employee comes up to him rushing, yelling that there's something wrong with his mom. When he ran back up to the front of the shop, he saw his mom slumped over in a chair with tears coming from her eyes, and she just suffered a stroke. She was rushed to the hospital where she couldn't move or speak for a while, and when she was finally able to move her arm, all she could do was point to letters of the alphabet to spell out what she needed to say. So once she was able to do that, the first thing she said to Kevin was, "No gift." Kevin was kind of amused by this. He's like, wow, she comes back from a stroke and the first thing she's worried about is her gift. She must forgot I gave her the wine box. So he tells her, like, Mom, remember, like, I gave you the wine box. Remember you came to the furniture shop and you opened it? And then she spelled out hate gift. Kevin, again, taking it lighthearted, like, oh, she must not have liked the wine box. Okay, well, I'll make sure I give you a better gift. You can leave the wine box with me and I'll get you something else. So he's not getting a hint. And y'all know the movie, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants? So this is about to be the familyhood of the traveling wine box, because Kevin decided to give the wine box to his sister, who gave it back to him because she felt like it was broken because the doors wouldn't stay closed, which is something that Kevin hadn't experienced before. And since he received the wine box and he refurbished it, he didn't remember any type of loose hinges. So from there, he gave it to his brother, who liked the wine box and loved how it smelled. To him, it smelled like the jasmine flower. However, his wife hated that smell because to her, that jasmine flower smelled like cat urine. So his brother returned the box to Kevin just after 3 days. Then Kevin gives the wine box to his girlfriend, who gave it back to him just after 2 days, simply saying, you should sell this instead. Which he did. He sold the wine box at his furniture shop to a middle-aged couple, again, only after 3 days. When Kevin came to his furniture shop to open up, right at his door was the wine box with a note attached that said, this has a bad darkness about it, which is similar to what Kevin's mother shared after she was able to recover from the stroke. She said that when she opened the wine box, it was a breeze that came across her that had a sense of evil. And right after, she just remembers being in the hospital because that's when she suffered the stroke, after she felt the breeze coming from the wine box. So Kevin finally decided to give up on gifting the wine box. He couldn't quite understand why people were acting so strangely about it. So he decided, since no one else wants it, I'll take it. What could be the big deal? What are people so dramatic about? And as soon as Kevin took the wine box home, he began having nightmares. There was one nightmare that seemed to be reoccurring while he had possession of the wine box. The dream was him and a friend or a loved one would be walking and talking. Then he would make eye contact with them. Then he would notice their facial features would start to change and they would start to morph into a creature. They started talking different. They just didn't seem like themselves, almost as if like an evil set of eyes replaced theirs. And in the dream, as soon as he would notice that this person is morphing into something else, like a complete hag, that spirit, that hag, would then attack him and waken him up out of his sleep. But he would wake up with welts and bruises all over his body. And this would happen night after night. So one night, Kevin had his siblings over for dinner along with his sister-in-law. And after talking at dinner, they got really tired. So they just decided to stay the night at Kevin's place. The next morning during breakfast, his sister shared she had a horrible dream of this creepy looking woman that attacked her while she was sleeping. And as she's sharing details of this story, Kevin looks over at his brother and he's nodding along as if he knows exactly what she's about to say. Then come to find out, all of them experienced the same dream that night. And Kevin could relate to the dream because she was describing the same exact dream that he had. After they left, Kevin called his girlfriend to ask what happened when she had possession of the wine box, and she explained that she had a dream, and she began describing the same dream that Kevin had and his siblings had. That night, Kevin decided to keep the wine box in the outside storage unit, and while in the house preparing for bed, he began to see shadows in his home. And in the future, just fast forwarding a bit, then we'll come back, people who visit him would see these same shadows as well. They would think he had somebody else in the home because they would literally just see a dark figure moving. But that night, with the wine box in his storage unit, he went to sleep. And then all of a sudden he woke up because he heard his fire alarm in his storage unit going off. So he ran downstairs to the storage unit. Not a lick of fire was in sight, not a smoke, a flame, a nothing. But a strong aroma of cat urine was filling the storage unit. As soon as he opened the doors, he was just hit with cat pee. Kevin decided to bring the wine box back inside because he wanted to do some research on to see if he could figure out some more information on this wine box, where it comes from, why is it causing all of this energy, because he was just noticing strange things that was happening. And when he brought the wine box to his room to do research, he now noticed this cat urine smell is now smelling like jasmine flower again, which seemed pleasant. But while he's click-clacking, looking up stuff, doing his research, he felt someone lay their hand over his hand. And then as soon as he felt it, he looked out the corner of his eye, then he just saw someone run out the room. He began chasing down his shadow, but they just disappeared into the thin air. So he just went back upstairs to continue doing research. And I know y'all may be thinking, Kevin, just get rid of the box. But that's exactly what Kevin was afraid of, because he felt like simply destroying the box without any training or knowledge of what type of spirit or energy is on it would make matters worse, because he doesn't know what he's working with, or destroying it, throwing it away would disturb the spirit even more. So he thought the best thing to do is to post this wine box on eBay for sale. And this part of the story I just shared with y'all was the description of the wine box. He listed it under the dybbuk box, and towards the end of the description he wrote, "Help me. Baby, can you help me?" First part of the story is everything he put in the description. So you would think like, okay, so everyone is like, no one's gonna buy it because it seems creepy. And he wanted to make sure he found someone responsible that knew about this type of paranormal world that could handle the responsibility of the wine box. So imagine you're scrolling on eBay looking for some antique items. You see a beautiful wine box, then you read the entire description. Like, who would buy that after reading all that? But people were actually putting in bids for it because he didn't list the price, so people just started bidding on it. And a student by the name of Joseph, who lived in Missouri over 2,000 miles away, would become the new owner of the wine box because he won the bid. So now 20-year-old college student Joseph is the new owner of the wine box. It wasn't an easy decision for him. He said he went back and forth in his head about it, but he just couldn't stop thinking about it. He was just very curious after reading the description and wanted to see for himself. So 1 week later, when he came home to his room, he noticed a strong smell of what? Cat urine all over his room. So he was sniffing, trying to find the source of the smell. And then he looked on his desk and he noticed he had a package waiting on him, which was of course the wine box. And the first night of owning it, it went smooth. He shared an apartment with 6 other students, and they all would take turns keeping the wine box for a few days, and each one had some weird experiences, like their eyes burning, feeling sick, but they just chucked it up to, okay, well, maybe it's the weather, it can't be the wine box. No one wanted to put it on the wine box because they couldn't make sense of it. Until one day they all came home from class and they noticed in the corner of their apartment, the wine box got magically moved to the far corner of the apartment and the doors wide open, and no one could remember who put it there. So from there, the bad luck really started happening. Their electronic devices weren't working. They were feeling sick. They had bad attitudes. They were having nightmares. Just the energy in the apartment seemed off. From there, Joseph decided to do some research of his own on the dybbuk box. And from his research, he came to the conclusion that this wine box has at least 2 dybbuks, 2 spirits in it. And as he continued to own the wine box, he's having the nightmares. He began to lose his hair as well. He would just wake up and locks of hair would be on his pillow. So Joseph began to share his experiences with his coworkers at a museum he worked at about the wine box, what's going on. And one coworker by the name of Jason became very intrigued with this wine box, and he wanted to study it and find out its origins. So when he found out that Joseph was putting the wine box up for sale, he knew he had to jump on the opportunity. So he went half with his friend, and his friend happened to be a musician. Random fact. So now Jason is the new owner of the wine box. So he immediately carefully inspected the box with gloves, and from his observations he concluded that it had to be from the 1960s. Although it was a wine box, the items inside showed that it could possibly be used for something else. So while investigating each item, for some reason Jason just felt the need to touch the wine box with his bare hands. So he took one of his gloves off and he touched the wine box and immediately jumped back. And then he touched the wine box again to confirm what he was feeling. On the second touch, he felt like the wood was vibrating. And as he kept his hand in place to try to figure out what else would go on, a sharp pain went through his hand straight into his stomach, and he took his hand back, and the pain was still there, but eventually went away after a while. But it would reoccur every so often, every few days. And also doing my research for this video, when he was saying that he felt like the wine box could be used for something else, immediately when Kevin first opened the wine box, I assumed that someone was using it for an altar. Maybe it was like a spirit that was governing over the altar, and they were like, she would feed the spirit, give it wine and food and stuff, and had locks for like a connection to some type of DNA, maybe like an ancestor altar or something. So when he was going through it and he said, especially the pennies, I'm like, oh my gosh, to me, pennies on any random table, I'm like, oh baby, that's an altar. So going back to Jason, at night he began to have nightmares of people he knew turning into a creature and attacking him, waking up with welts and bruises, the same thing that happened to the previous owners. But in one of his dreams, he also saw an old lady who would just stand there and point at the wine box in his dreams. Then he would wake up, his eyes would be bloodshot red, his mouth would have a metallic taste to it, as if he was poisoned. So he went to the doctor assuming that he had been poisoned, and everything came back fine, but he couldn't help to suspect that something like some type of chemical had to be on the items to poison him. And when he touched it with his bare hand, maybe he somehow ingested it. But when he tested the items out, everything came back clear and normal. So while at work in his office, the light bulbs would shatter and his coworkers would see that he wasn't looking well. And then come to find out, they found out that he was keeping the wine box at work in the museum. So his coworkers are like, why would you bring this haunted item in here? We don't want to take none of that energy home. Get that up out of here, because what if the spirit starts scaring and messing with us? No, that's your wine box. That's your responsibility. You take it home. But he was afraid to take it home because his wife kind of gave him the same speech. Like, okay, if you want to get your little dorkiness on and do research on this haunted wine box, you keep it away from here because I don't want it attacking my family. So Jason had to hide the wine box in the closet upstairs that no one was using. But hiding it didn't work because now everyone in the family is having nightmares. Everyone is seeing shadows. Everyone has a metallic taste in their mouth. They're experiencing the same thing because now it's in the home of the family. And then the house would get so cold too that when they speak, they could see their breath. So everyone started experiencing the same weird occurrences. Meanwhile, people online are still waiting on updates from Jason about the wine box. So like each owner, people are like, okay, so who has it now? Who has it now? What are you like? What's going on? So Jason continuously shares his experience with the wine box. Then this catches the attention of Steve Mass from Long Island Paranormal Research Group. He found out about the issues Jason was having with the wine box and suggested for him to purchase the book of King Solomon and to do a ritual in the book that's called an appeasement ritual. So Jason is more like a logical math and science type of guy, so he doesn't really understand the spiritual world, but he was so desperate for help, he found himself in the middle of the floor doing a 15th century ritual because he needed the help. Like, imagine all this stuff going on. I would do anything. I'm like, okay, you want me to run around in a circle and get some goat blood? I got you. I would have did the same thing. So after doing the ritual, he began to notice the symptoms eased off over the upcoming weeks, and this is where he felt more comfortable now to dive deep into his research to discover what was going on behind this mystical wine box. So first, Jason tried tracking down the original owner, who was Kevin, but he ended up reaching out to Kevin's sister, who refused to give him Kevin's information because, again, Kevin wanted nothing to do with the wine box. He's like, listen, you got it. It's yours now, giving the same energy that the granddaughters gave him when he first brought it. So this is where it gets a little weird. So Jason continued to do his research, right? So he found out that Kevin's grandmother was a Russian Jewish immigrant who died a few years ago at the age of 103, and she was intrigued by Jewish mysticism. And that may sound familiar because that's the origin story of the wine box when he first purchased it. So Jason thought, like, okay, did you just make this whole thing up and just based it off your grandmother? Because this is the exact same story. So Jason continued to look up people, and he came across a number of an old woman, and upon speaking to her, she claimed like she didn't know who Kevin was. I don't even know a Kevin. But Jason said, well, if you just so happen to find out who Kevin is, I would love to speak to him, and I'm willing to pay $150. And then magically, a few days later, Jason is sitting down with Kevin, and he's able to ask him all the questions and try to get to the bottom of this wine box. So Kevin apparently didn't know about the high interest of the wine box continuing on the internet, so he began sharing more stories with Jason on the wine box that he didn't mention in the description. He shared that the day his mom had a stroke, the FBI raided his furniture shop. That scared his landlord so bad that he terminated the lease, so Kevin had to close down his furniture shop. So Jason's listening to the story, and he's like, okay, are you just trying to make this sound more dramatic? Because magically, the day your mom had a stroke, the FBI raided your shop. But once he did research on it, there was an FBI raid going on in that area because there was a series of stolen items that were being resold in that area. So the FBI did raid his shop that day, and he had to close down his business. And he was suspicious of this as well because Kevin had a background in entertainment and marketing. So he thought like, okay, so this is just like a creative writing exercise that you did. Now you just don't want nothing to do with it because it gained so much attention. But Jason is continuing to listen. So Kevin also shared that one day a customer came into his shop, and for some reason he became real angry and irate, and he knocked the wine box over. Then later that day, that same customer committed suicide. Then another customer came into his shop one day being nosy because she noticed that at night when she would walk by the shop, she would look into like the basement area through like the little window, and she would see a bunch of people dressed in black cloaks dancing around. So she wanted to know, like, are you guys having some type of party at night? Like, why is all these people in the shop? And he didn't even know the people were in the shop. And remember, the basement is where Kevin kept the wine box initially. Jason is taking all this information in, and now he really wants to get in touch with the family that allegedly sold Kevin the wine box. So as he's continuing to do his research on the wine box, on the family, he was carrying around the wine box with him because he just did the ritual, so he felt comfortable with it now. But over time, it seemed like the ritual he did was wearing off because when he would have the wine box in his car, he would see and find rotting mice all over his car. His house began to smell like a sewer, but he didn't have any sewer issues, so he noticed these random occurrences starting to pop back up. So Jason got fed up, and he decided this curse has to end with me. I refuse to resell this dybbuk box and risk subjecting someone else to all this torment. So determined to take matters into his own hands, he moved the wine box cabinet into another property he owned, which happened to be right next door, and he conducted another ritual to try and neutralize its effects. After completing the ritual, Jason went back to his main house to take a bath, but as he soaked in the tub, he began feeling intense pain. He vomited dark mucus, collapsed on the floor. He was passed out for hours, and despite this terrifying experience, Jason was committed to containing the box's energy. He did not want that box to win. He left the dybbuk box at the neighboring property and continued researching ways to seal its power. Drawing inspiration from the book of Exodus and the materials used in the Ark of the Covenant, Jason constructed a new box from acacia wood and lined it with gold leaf. So he basically created a shell for the wine box. Once the new container was complete, Jason went to retrieve the dybbuk box from the basement cellar where he had stored it. When he entered the room, he noticed something bizarre. The ceiling was covered in a strange white powdery mold, and dead spiders were scattered everywhere. As he opened the trap door where the box was stored, he was met with another shocking sight. Hundreds of centipedes had gathered around the area. Thankfully, Jason had initially wrapped the dybbuk box, the wine box, in bubble wrap, but even with that protection, the plastic was soaked with water as if the wine box was sweating. He carefully removed the wine box out of its plastic, placed it inside the aceia wood container, locked it, and then he secured the entire setup in a plastic shipping container for additional protection, like closing it completely off. After sealing the dybbuk box, the wine box, Jason claimed that the disturbing effects he'd experienced before started to fade. However, anytime he approached the box, he would notice a scent that would come from the box. And it was oddly addictive. Like, you know, when something smells so strange, but you keep smelling it because you kind of like it. Kind of like the people who like the smell of gas, like gasoline. For me, I like the smell of rubbing alcohol. Like, I know I shouldn't like the smell, but I like the smell as well. So that smell, a certain smell that he really liked, was coming from the wine box, almost as if the wine box was trying to get him to open it back up so he could smell it more. But eventually, Jason buried the dybbuk box somewhere on his property, vowing to never reveal its location. Kevin Mannis, the original owner of the dybbuk box who purchased it from the estate sale, became harder to reach as time went on. He refused to share details about the family he purchased the wine box from, the supposed Holocaust survivors connected to the wine box. He didn't share any information with Jason. And during this time, Jason is working on writing a book about the experiences he had with the wine box, and he hoped Kevin would collaborate with him so they could just tag team their experiences and find any correlation. But Kevin just faded off into the abyss. But even without Kevin's input, the dybbuk box legend continued to grow. Jason's book was published in 2011, so it stirred up a lot of interest with the readers, and it gained even more attention with the release of The Possession in 2012, which is a horror movie. The film didn't follow the actual story of the wine box. It borrowed heavily from the lore Kevin had crafted in his original eBay post, but this added on to the mystery of the wine box because rumors spread on the set of The Possession that it was haunted. Cast and crew reported strange incidents, including lights randomly exploding during filming, and adding on another eerie correlation to the wine box because they always had their fluorescent lights exploding. So rewind a little bit. Years before the movie release, Jason stumbled across a post on IMDb that surprised him. Someone claimed they knew the creator of the dybbuk box and alleged the entire story was a hoax. At that point, Jason was spending years researching, so he wanted to know who had more information that could help him out. So he tracked down the person behind the post who reluctantly admitted the story was fabricated. They even claimed to know one of the people who had contributed an item to the wine box. So Jason's investigation eventually led him to the bar where Kevin Mannis had once worked. Staff members openly shared that Kevin made up the entire story, with one claiming they had donated their hair to be included in the box. When Jason confronted Kevin about these findings, Kevin dismissed the claim, saying the bar staff couldn't be trusted. This left Jason questioning everything if the wine box was just a made-up story. But then how could that explain the strange experiences he was having and Joseph was having, the guy that owned it before him? By 2010, Jason had lost nearly all contact with Kevin, but managed to speak with Kevin's younger brother. The brother denied Kevin's claims about the reoccurring nightmares of an old hag woman and recalled seeing the wine cabinet in Kevin's shop. When he asked if he could take it, Kevin said, "No, I have plans for it." Kevin's brother admitted he believed the box origin story was fake, but also said the box seemed to carry a dark energy. He theorized that Kevin might have accidentally tapped into spiritual forces he fully didn't understand when he created the box, especially with the Hebrew inscriptions on it and the items locked inside. Maybe he manifested some type of energy that he was just trying to play around with. He also mentioned their grandmother, who lived with Kevin for several years, had a strong interest in the Kabbalah and mystical practices. This knowledge, he speculated, could have influenced Kevin's creation of the wine box. When Jason later brought this up to Kevin, he became angry, denying his grandmother had any connection with the story. Years later, skeptics found an old online post from Kevin where he admitted the dybbuk box was a lie. In the post, he challenged everyone to find references to a dybbuk box in literature, in any type of written or media type of literature, before his eBay posting, basically confirming it was all made up. And he wanted his credit, like, y'all wasn't talking about no dybbuk box until I came up with that for the eBay post. I guess he was seeing all the interest, so he wanted his credit for it. In an interview with Input magazine, Kevin elaborated on the box's creation, saying it wasn't about money but a way to channel his emotional struggles. He revealed that he made the box during a time of prayer and forgiveness for his sins, so he crafted the box in the midst of sorrow. However, Kevin maintained that some aspects of the story were real. He confirmed that he had given the wine box to his mother on Halloween, and she did suffer a stroke shortly after. But then he admitted that his mother exaggerated her experiences for TV because she was interviewed as well. So she exaggerated the initial incident to add on to her son's dybbuk box story. In 2016, the dybbuk box resurfaced when this guy, featured it on his show, Deadly Possession. Zach invited Kevin onto the show, and in a strange move, they locked Kevin in the basement room with the box. So Kevin's just thinking he's locked in a room with the box. He's thinking they're not filming yet, but they were recording him. And then Zach and his crew watched from another room. During the taping, they saw Kevin starting to speak in a fake English accent and making odd references to a shadow person. Zach and his team panicked, thinking Kevin was performing a ritual or becoming possessed, but as they continued to listen, they realized that Kevin was almost rehearsing a prayer or like a spoken word poem, and he thought he was in private, that he had a moment to rehearse. So once they said, okay, we're filming action, he was going to recite that poem to make it seem like he was being possessed by the box. So he up there in rehearsals trying to add on some more theatrical effects and mysticism about this box. But after he just said it was all made up. But I guess now he's like, okay, so these are new cameras. This is a new show, so now I want more attention. At some point, Zach purchased the dybbuk box from Jason, making it a key attraction at his haunted museum in Las Vegas. Zach claimed the box caused unexplained events, including an alleged curse on the musician Post Malone, who interacted with it. So despite Kevin's admission that the story was fabricated, both Jason and Zach maintained that the dybbuk box holds real power. Jason described it as a wish box, suggesting it has the ability to affect people's lives in profound ways. He speculated that intentionally or not, Kevin might have infused the box with energy while creating it. I guess the intention behind it, even though he didn't know what he was doing, he wanted this to be a mystical box so bad that his intention manifested into real life, where he created a haunted box. The dybbuk box remains one of the infamous cursed objects of modern times. While its origin story has been debunked, its legend persists, fueled by belief, fear, and the mysteries of the human psyche. Could Kevin have accidentally created something dark by channeling his emotions into the box? Did he actually put a spirit in the box and played dumb later? Is he just an attention-seeking man, so people are just going on and on by the placebo effect, thinking that they're actually being haunted when they're not, because they want to believe that it's haunted? Kind of like online. This is a weird correlation. When I see people watch scary movies or haunted movies, and then a certain community is like, oh my gosh, I couldn't watch that movie because it was demonic. I felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable. And it's like, you really felt uncomfortable by like editing and movie effects and sounds, and like it's all digital. But then people will comment behind, be like, oh my gosh, I felt the same way, because they want to seem like they're in the loop. So they're just saying anything to make it seem like they experience what the person's talking about. Like, no, trust me, I did it too. Could it be that type of just follow the leader theory? Or could this box be something serious? And maybe Kevin just said it was fake because he's trying not to attach himself to the box again. So the best way to do that was to deny it. So you guys let me know what y'all think. Is it a hoax? Is it an accidental spiritual portal? Or is everyone just lying? Is the whole thing made up and everyone's playing along with it because now it's making the money? But then how would you explain people's experiences? So you guys let me know what you think about the dybbuk box, the wine box below. Have you guys ever purchased a haunted item before? Or maybe an item you brought into your home and it just seemed to change the energy, so you had to get rid of it? How did you get rid of it? How did you notice the energy shift? How did you know it was that item? Tell us your stories down below. And also tell us, how do you cleanse your items as well when you bring them into your home? But if you're bringing a crystal home and you want to cleanse your crystal, you can get my crystal dry rub on BlaqueWitchYaya.com, which is an all-in-one crystal cleanser that you can use to keep and charge your crystals, no matter what type of crystals they are. Because you know, some crystals you can't put in water or use anything liquidy around them. But the crystal dry rub is good for all crystals. It's all-in-one. And you can get yours from BlaqueWitchYaya.com. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Let me know what you think about this story down below. But like I always say, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Until next time, you guys, Ashe, baby.